Alrighty, so today we're going to do the season preview of FC Cincinnati. So there's no doubt that Cincinnati championship window is wide open right now. I mean, for the past couple of years, they have built to a core to a point where they won the Supporters Shield last season. And while I know that obviously Pat Nolan would love to try to repeat that in next season, though that's going to be really tough because we haven't seen a team win back-to-back Supporters Shield in a very long time. There's no doubt that they know what the ultimate goal is this season, and that, of course, is finish the job that was left undone last season, which is win MLS Cup. And with the way that they have definitely made some reinforcement this season, there could be a case that they could be a team that could be the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. Now, in terms of last season, as I said, they won the Supporters Shield with a 29-5 record and finished with 69 points. Nice. Their last playoff appearance was last year, and their last playoff round win was also last year. In fact, they won a couple playoff games last year, made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. But obviously, we know that they're looking to try to not only get back to it, but also avenge what happened last season when they blew a 2-0 lead against their most hated rival, the Columbus Crew, and they're still looking to try to win their first ever MLS Cup. Now, looking at some of the players that they bought in, they definitely bought in some interesting names. So obviously, throughout this off season, one of the biggest free agent in terms of this offseason has to be Miles Robinson. And there was a case where, who's going to win the Miles Robinson sweepstakes? Who is going to get a talented center back from the free agency market? The answer is FC Cincinnati. Now, I know obviously Miles Robinson had a down year last season, but there's no doubt that I think he's going to bounce back, especially with a team like FC Cincinnati. And they also got Corey Bear, too, and I do like this signing, too, because, Corey Bear had a really good season last year, probably his best season that he had with the Houston Dynamo since his rookie season with RSL, and that's just going to add in more depth in terms of that forward group. I mean, yes, as I mentioned, they lost Brendan Vasquez, but their forward group definitely had some good depth, and that we all know that when Aaron Bupensa joined this team last season, that was kind of them preparing potentially them losing Brendan Vasquez this offseason, and now it feels like now the role has been shifted mainly to Bupensa as the main number 9 of this team. They also got Kip Keller, and I know people will laugh about Kip Keller in his time with Austin, but I'm actually glad the fact that he decided to move to another team, and that obviously his time with Austin was absolutely disastrous. But sometimes when you see a players that had a tough time in their previous club, a change of scenery will definitely help, and especially when you've been able to join a team that is championship caliber like FC Cincinnati. There's no doubt that I think Kip Keller is going to have a better time with FC Cincinnati. And plus, I do feel like it was kind of harsh the fact that yes, he had that horror game against St. Louis City, but I feel like Austin, they really kind of used that game as the reason why he was not good enough for the team, and I think that's harsh. The fact that yes, he had a bad game that one, but this kid, he still have some talent in his hand, and again, I think that a change of scenery will really help. Although he's going to have to try to fight himself into the team because he's just going to be part more of a depth piece, and that goes the same with Isaiah Foster. And then of course, I put a couple of players that is in question mark because even though these moves are not done, it seems like most likely it's going to done. And I think the Pavel Butcher one is pretty much almost confirmed. I mean, they've said that it's on a pending thing, but it just feels like it's inevitable that they're gonna get him, and a guy that had some Champions League uh caliber. Well, I wouldn't say League caliber, but Champions League veterans kind of player doing his time in the Czech Republic with Victoria Plzeň, and the fact that he's going to be linked up with Wobodo there in that midfield role. I mean, imagine having the likes of Butcher and Wobodo in your midfield. That is a really dynamic duo of a midfield, probably the strongest you could say in terms of that spot. And then they're also looking to add some more depth in bringing Jackson Mendez into this team. Now, this one isn't as close as the Pavel Butcher signing, but it seems like there could be a case that the former Orlando City and LAFC player could be heading to FC Cincinnati soon. Now, in terms of players that they lost, obviously the big out for this team is Brendan Vasquez, and he's definitely thriving during his time with Rayados. And I'm not surprised the fact that he's doing well down there in Liga MX and with Rayados right now because we know that he has that tendency of being a goal scorer, and this is also good news for a U.S. men's national team fan as well because again, for a long time we've been questioning who exactly is going to be that number 9 that will carry this national team. You could say that it could be Brandon Vasquez with the way that he's been doing himself some good form with Rayados ever since he joined the team in the winter. But they also lost Santiago Arias, Don Baji, Junior Moreno, Harrison Merlo, Yetson Mascara, and potentially Alvaro Barreal. Now that is still a big question mark because it seems like he's been going for a bit of a holdout right now because there was a lot of rumor that he was going to be potentially moving to Europe, but with the way that the European transfer window just slammed shut yesterday, and the fact that there's still no big move of Barrial going to Europe, it seems like most likely he's going to be staying with FC Cincinnati, and that there's even rumors saying that he's going to be joining FC Cincinnati in the preseason camp. So that's obviously great news for FC Cincinnati fans because obviously, we knew that heading into this offseason, there's two big players that could be sold off for a big amount of money. They already did that with Brandon Vasquez. But now there's also the question of Aurel Barrio, especially the way that Barrio was linked with a lot of European teams. But he's going to be at least staying with this team until the summer, and we'll see whether or not in the summer transfer window, whether or not if he is going to be bought by a European team. I mean, Barrio has expressed his interest of playing in Europe, and I'm pretty sure Cincinnati is not going to not let his interest be granted if the moves is correct and if the money is right for them to get Barrio um, to Europe and get a big sum of money out of that. Now, in terms of their preseason schedule, so they already are halfway in terms of their preseason schedule. With the first two games, they lost the first game against Austin FC 2-1, but they did win 2-0 against New England just yesterday. Then they have the Philadelphia Union on the 9th, and then on the 15th, on their final preseason game, they're going to be playing against the New England Revolution. Now, they are also going to be in the CONCACAF Champions Cup for the first time ever, and in leg one of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, they will be going on the road to play against Cavalier in February 22nd, and then on the 28th, they'll play the same team. This time, it's going to be at TQL Stadium in Cincinnati. Now, looking at the first 10 games of their schedule, they start the season opener against Toronto FC before they have to go on the road against Chicago. Then they play at home against DC United before playing on the road against New England. Then they play against NYCFC. Then they go on the road again, this time against Charlotte FC. Then they play against the New York Red Bulls before going on the road two times to play Montreal and Atlanta. And then they finish off the first 10 games by playing against the Colorado Rapids. So, yeah, it feels like it's a little bit balanced in terms of Cincinnati, their schedule, where there are some good teams that they're going to face, but there's also definitely some winnable game, and especially they also have a balance of the fact that it feels like there's no stretch doing the first 10 games where they'll be at home for more than two straight game. In fact, there's actually even no stretch of the time where they're going to have more than one game home game in a row. Basically, all their home games, at least in the first 10 games, are it's just basically them being at home in one game, and then they go on the road in the next game. But in terms of their post Leeds Cup, well, this is where it gets difficult for Cincinnati because straight off the bat they get to face against Messi and friends down in South Florida on August 24th, and then they play against Montreal at home before we have the Hell is Real Derby on September 14th against the Columbus Crew. Then they get to go on the road to face against Minnesota before going on the road again to face against Nashville SC. And then this is also where it gets really tough for this team. Again, it feels like some of the common theme we're starting to see with a lot of these good teams in my season preview is that near the end of the season, they always tends to play against some of the toughest team. I'm not sure if this is by design, but yeah, some of the good teams I've mentioned in the Eastern Conference are facing some murderous road kind of stretch heading near the end of the season, and uh, Cincinnati is no exception to that because on September 28th they get to face against LAFC before on the second they face against NYCFC. By the way, that LAFC matchup could be a preview of MLS Cup, just saying. But then they of course return home to play against Orlando after playing on the road against NYCFC, and then on decision day they get to play against the Philadelphia Union, just as I mentioned in the Union season preview not long ago. So again, just really there's a lot of tough games out there. I mean, if you look at the schedule, I would say the Montreal game probably is winnable. The Minnesota road game is winnable. I mean, to be fair, with the way that Cincinnati has been so good these past couple of seasons, you just kind of feel like even when they do face against good team, they'll always make a statement win. But that being said, when you look at some of the games that they'll face against tough opponent. I mean, I guess maybe this could be a good way for them to prepare heading into the playoffs because when you're in the playoffs, you are basically facing against some of the best team to try to get out of that bloodbath in the Eastern Conference and potentially reach MLS Cup. So, what are the strengths for this FC Cincinnati team? It feels like it's the same as last season. So, last season, again, this Cincinnati team, they pretty much had no weakness when they put in their best 11, and it's kind of the case this season. When they're healthy, they're pretty much well rounded. There's really no big weakness on this team whatsoever. Now, obviously, I think the weakness of this team has got to be when they're not healthy, and that, of course, is the depth of this team, especially the wing back and back line kind of role. I mean, the wing back position is definitely going to be a huge question mark, especially they decided to not bring back Santiago Arias this season, so there's going to be a bit of a hole to fill in that right wing back spot, and then of course in the left wing back spot, even though if Alvaro Barrio is going to be ready to play for this team in the beginning of the season, there's no guarantee that he's going to be there for the entire season. So that's going to be one thing that I would say not just wingback depth, but wingbacks could be a it could be a weakness for this team, which is kind of crazy to say because that was kind of one of their strength too, especially with Barrio being probably the best wingback in the league last season, just bombing up forward and provide those beautiful crosses that you. I don't think any wingback did as good as what we saw Barrio did last season. Now, in terms of expectation for the Cincinnati team, I mean, it's pretty easy. They need to win MLS Cup. And again, as I said before, whenever I do season preview with these good Eastern Conference teams, and I've done a lot of them, it feels like a lot of teams in the CONCACAF Champions Cup uh, is usually a good team from last season, which again, it's not a big surprise because looking at how they qualify, most of these teams finish well to be able to qualify into this stage. But obviously, it's going to be the same message I would say about Cincinnati, where yes, the expectation is win MLS Cup, and it's MLS Cup or bust kind of season. But we also have about 3 or 4 teams that is in the same projectile, and that this is where I won't be surprised. We're gonna see teams that's gonna not meet their expectation, and there's gonna be frustration throughout the season, and even especially into the playoffs. This is where Cincinnati is gonna really hope that they can get out of that bloodbath, and also try not to blow a big lead like they did last season in the conference final. Again, they were so close of making to MLS Cup. If they made it to MLS Cup that year, I do think they would have won that one outright because again, as I mentioned, the Eastern Conference is way better than the Western Conference last season. It's going to be the same case this season. It feels like whoever is going to make it to MLS Cup out of the East is probably going to win MLS Cup outright, and that for Cincinnati, they know that last season was a huge missed opportunity. If they would have just kept that lead, they not only get to play in MLS Cup against LAFC, but host it. Most likely they would have won that one too and get their first MLS Cup crown. But the other thing that I think Cincinnati is also looking to chase for is the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So again, you look at all these good teams in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I would say Cincinnati is definitely one of those teams that could be favorites of winning this whole competition. But we'll see whether or not if Pat Nolan is going to take that competition seriously. I think he will, especially with the way that the CONCACAF Champions Cup, it means a lot to a lot of these MLS team, and especially some Liga MX team. And not to mention, you also get a spot qualified for the FIFA Club World Cup that's going to be in the U.S. Next year. There's no doubt that Cincinnati is going to have a go at it and see if they can join the Seattle Sounders, becoming the second MLS team to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. What do you think is the strength, weakness, and expectation this season if you're an FC Cincinnati fan? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.